Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Medical Myths, the show about what not to do with your body. And today we have a really good one. I was initially going to do a completely separate topic, but something blew up in the bodybuilding community, which I'm not a part of. Clearly, I'm not part of the bodybuilding community, but I am always in favor of addressing medical myths wherever they show up. And this one definitely overlapped with my field of interest here on the show. So I figured that I would capitalize on this opportunity to talk about the rhetoric and tactics of quackery and grifts, and especially this one that has happened in the bodybuilding community. And this is a really weird one, a really interesting one. So today we're talking about somebody by the name of the Liver King, and he's a character. Let me show you all his Instagram, but he's a public figure, and he is the self-proclaimed CEO of the ancestral lifestyle. So right away, we have a kind of appeal to naturalism, an appeal to ancient people. And this is kind of his trend. Like his thing is that you need to go back to the way that we used to live back when we were prehistoric humans. And that's the way that we're meant to be. And he makes a lot of claims along these lines. And you can see in that photo of his profile pic there, that is a raw animal liver. And a lot of his dietary advice goes along the lines of eating the whole animal, which is not something that I am opposed to. There are benefits to not wasting animal products if you're going to kill an animal to begin with, but he advocates for the consumption of things like raw liver and raw testicles, etc., and then claims that these dietary changes, along with these 9 ancestral tenets, are what's going to make you optimally healthy and the apex predator. That's his goal here. So look at his pictures. He's got pretty good branding here. He's got 1.7 million followers on Instagram with only 470 posts on here. He's got, I think, a TikTok. He's got a website, and he's got his 9 ancestral tenets here up on the top. And then you look at his pictures. He's got this like very caveman or Viking like aesthetic about him. He's got like this fur hat that he wears, and you can tell that he's absolutely jacked. So naturally, with this kind of physique and this self-proclaimed Liver King lifestyle and primal lifestyle, it's easy for people who want to be alpha males or want to be that apex predator, people who see themselves as these very fit, uh, lean bodybuilders, might buy into this person's ideas. You got all these shirtless pictures of him with birds, showing off how masculine he is. He's got this picture I used for the thumbnail of him eating a raw liver. He's got this picture of him on the beach, like pulling a sled with some weights on it, wearing his little fur hat and stuff. So his thing is working. People are buying into this. They think that it's a great idea. And you would think that, right? You would think, hey, this guy is jacked. He's absolutely jacked. He's doing something right. And he's been on streams multiple times in the past. He's been on very big podcasts. I think he's been on Joe Rogan's podcast. I would not be surprised if he has been. But he said multiple times that this physique was related to his lifestyle and his diet. And that's the key to success, and people bought into it. Well, fun things happened because an email that he sent, I don't know who the email was to, but it got leaked to the public, and it exposes the grift for what it really is. And it looked pretty bad for him, I'm not going to lie. So let's read this email. So he says, I've been working out for 35 years. I know how to eat, train, rest, and recover. I even have a hard shell hyperbaric chamber at my house. Yeah, we've talked about hyperbaric chambers. But as I've reached my mid 40s, it's getting harder and the back fat fucking kills me. To support these exhaustive efforts, I've recently started taking Omnitrope, the 5.8 milligram vials from Empower Pharmacy, 11,000 US dollars per month for my new dose, which is 4 vials per week, 16 vials a month. I don't know if this shit is grossly underdosed or what, but I've been taking 2 vials per week and my IGF-1 is only at 139. See recent labs below. My doctor told me that I could double it in an effort to get to the upper 200s or low 300s. She thinks I could be a hyper non-responder? Question marks. I'm wondering if taking a fuckload of other peptides could be confounding the results and possibly interfering with efficacy. For instance, here's what I'm currently taking. IGF-1, been taking this for a year. CJC with IMAP, been taking that for a year. Abutamorin, been taking this for 2 months. Omnitrope for 6 weeks. Testosterone, a cruise dose. Deca for 3 weeks. And Winstrol, 50 mgs per day, been taking this for 3 weeks. Surprise, surprise, that a bodybuilder is taking steroids. He's taking a lot of steroids. In fact, he's taking so the 11,000 per month, I think, is just for the Omnitrope, not even factoring in these other compounds that he's taking, but over $11,000 a month on anabolic steroids. So this goes to show you that just because somebody is has a decent physique and claims that their diet and lifestyle has given them this physique, it's not always true. And I'm really not surprised. In fact, nobody was surprised to see that this was the case. And I can't give the bodybuilding community like an infinite amount of credit because they're kind of a mixed bag in terms of skepticism and their ability to suss out quackery and fraud within their own community. You see bodybuilders buying into things frequently, such as the hyperbaric chamber, buying into various supplements, various programs that aren't validated scientifically. But on the other hand, you do see the ability within the bodybuilding community to skeptically think about who is on steroids and who isn't. And the bodybuilding community was right about this man. And it really does not look good for him. He made an apology video, which really wasn't an apology at all. He basically made all of these excuses saying why he needed these steroids and that it wasn't a problem. But these are a lot of steroids, and for people who don't really follow this kind of community, I don't really follow a lot of the performance enhancing drugs community on the internet. So for people who haven't heard of these, IGF-1 is insulin-like growth factor, which mediates the activities of growth hormone. So it also not only kind of moderates it and can inhibit the production of more growth hormone, which seems to be a downside, but actually isn't. It causes increased muscle protein synthesis and glycogen storage along with that. So when you're building muscle, you have more ability to synthesize muscle fibers and then also store glycogen for later energy within that muscle. CJC is a GHRH, so growth hormone releasing hormone analog, and IMAP is a ghrelin mimic. So that will cause people to eat more, but also will lower somatostatin. Omnitrope is somatropin, which is another growth hormone analog. We have testosterone. It is what it sounds like. Deca is nandrolone, which is another type of testosterone with a higher affinity. The higher affinity for testosterone receptors, and Winstrol is another androgen. So we have multiple growth hormone related proteins and also or steroids, and also these androgens, which all together would produce a physique like this, but also can be kind of dangerous because a lot of the effects you get from overdoing these performance enhancing drugs, you frequently hear complaints about gynecomastia, which happens because testosterone and similar compounds are converted peripherally to estrogen. So as you increase your testosterone dosages, you build estrogen, which can cause um, testicular atrophy and breast growth in men. But also with this extra testosterone intake, you suppress your own ability to produce testosterone, which is also why you'd get some more of those effects. Growth hormone sounds like a good idea, but it can also be dangerous in building particularly cardiac muscle. So I'm going to look at a picture here with you all about kind of the downsides of anabolic steroids. And I'm not going to make this whole episode about the steroids because I do want to talk about the Liver King and his lifestyle that he advocates, because that's really kind of scary and also really funny. But just a little bit more about the steroids. We have hypertension and cardiac hypertrophy, which is going to be a result from increasing the amount of cardiac muscle mass. You're going to increase the heart rate, increase the pressures in the heart, which causes more muscle on the heart itself. You increase the mass of the left ventricle, which sounds great. It sounds like an awesome idea. Why would you not want your heart to pump harder? But the problem is you need to have a certain level of volume within the cardiac muscle, the ventricle itself. It needs to hold blood so that it can pump it out. And if you take up the extra space in the left ventricle with muscle, you lose space for blood volume. So while you can pump a lot stronger, you're also pumping less out at a time because you have that space being taken up. So you can get a cardiomyopathy and you can develop heart failure from overdoing these steroids. So there's kind of this myth that people with very jacked physiques are healthy people, and that's not really the case. Those body types are often very unhealthy to maintain and can cause all of these problems, such as the cardiomyopathy and also myocardial ischemia secondary to thrombus formation because you're upregulating things like thromboxane and you're causing more of those heart injuries. You're essentially inducing heart attacks. You're also getting vasospasm and increased oxidized LDL and inhibition of smooth muscle relaxation. So it's not good for the heart to be overdoing these things. So the even one steroid can lead to some of these problems. You add in all of these steroids that he's taking at one time and this frequently, you can imagine that in the future, he's not going to have some very good cardiac function. Um, but apart from that, moving kind of away from the steroids, like we're not surprised that he did this. And I'm not surprised that a grifter grifted and that I'm happy though that his grift was exposed. But I want to show you his website because I bet a lot of you have not been familiar with these his diet plan and exercise plan, because it's pretty easy to tell that he does not know what he's talking about. He's not a doctor. He claims to not be a doctor. He does claim to have a degree in biochemistry, which, you know what, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on that. It is common for people with degrees to get little tiny bits of truth correct and then use those to then make these other unsubstantiated claims. So here's the Liver King, once again shirtless. The Liver King has dedicated the past 20 years to reviving the primal patterns that progressed the sole surviving species of genus Homo. Liver King is an evolutionary hunter, a serial entrepreneur. I do not deny the serial entrepreneur statement. By nature, with a singular focus to honor our ancestors. to teach, preach, and model the ancestral message so that it becomes mainstream, so that primals, in capitals, don't have to suffer and struggle unnecessarily, which is kind of a funny statement saying what else he advocates for. Ancestral living was discovered not out of choice, but necessity. At the roots of today's suffering, therein lies tremendous friction between modern environments and our biology. Our ancestors had it right. Many years before us, they identified a simple, elegant way of living that enabled us to genetically express the highest version of ourselves. Yeah. Back in the good old days when people died in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, died in childbirth, had to hunt to live, and had poor hygiene, high disease exposure, would die of frostbite, all of these lovely things that would have happened before modern society. Yeah, let's go back to that. It sounds like a plan. I don't see any problems here. No, but for real, this glorification of ancient lifestyles is laughable, because it sounds great, like that you would be this apex hunter. But if you really think about what that means, you're losing kind of everything that has caused humans to live as long as we have. The reason why we're not dying out as quickly is because of modern technology. So I don't think that this is a smart way to go, but I also think that this is a misattribution to, like, claiming that his health and his physique is related to going back to the good old days of died in childbirth. And we have a super chat from Scarlett. His diet should include celery juice, as should mine. And this is a throwback to last week when I did the celery juice cleanse. And I'm guessing the super chat is for me to buy more celery juice. And I will take you up on that. I will buy some more celery juice. But he likes to play on this evolution standpoint, saying that evolution uh, made us this way, and this is problematic rhetorically, because evolution is not something that creates species. I've often said on this show that evolution makes organisms just good enough. Like, it selects for what works. It does not create something new. It does not have a purpose in mind. There is no intent to evolution. If something is alive and can reproduce, it probably will do so, and it's probably just good enough to do that. But it does not mean that our DNA was created or had a purpose to live in a certain way. So that's the major problem with his logic that he carries throughout this entire website. Many primals have asked why the name Liver King, and the answer is simple: because liver is king. Our early ancestors always favored the liver first. Many modern day hunter gatherer tribes still do, along with lions, great whites, and other wild alpha organisms. The liver is a nutritional powerhouse full of peptides, growth factors, and natural vitamins in their most bioavailable forms. Liver has historically held the crown for being nature's most nourishing food, and literally is the concert master so that we can genetically express our highest, most dominant form. So again, going to the fact that the genetics are somehow influenced by you eating liver. And I do not disagree with the fact that liver is a good way to get nutrients. It's a very nutrient dense food. And if you're going to eat meat, I do think that eating organ meat is a smart way to do that. You do get a significant percentage of your daily value of vitamins, especially vitamin A in the liver. And in fact, um, certain types of liver, namely polar bear liver, is a medical board's question favorite for hypervitaminosis A, or vitamin A toxicity, because of the high levels of vitamin A found in polar bear liver. Um, but if you don't overdo it and you eat liver in moderation, then of course, I think it is a good way to get nutrients. But that does not mean that liver is the ultimate way to get nutrition. And if you don't like liver, it's not the end of the world. You don't need to eat liver to be healthy. If you want to, cool, don't overdo it, but really not necessary. So he goes on more to talk about the fact that all these other animals eat liver, so therefore they are better predators because they ate this liver, which is problematic. In this statement with this very intense photo saying it's time to take massive action and put back in what the modern world has left out. Yeah, put back that Campylobacter, put back salmonella and hepatitis and all these things that were taken out of. Oh, wait, hold on. We don't want to have those things? Okay, yeah, maybe we should cook our food then and not be eating raw meat like he's going to be advocating here. There's a lot of things that the modern diet isn't doing well. And I actually did get in a Twitter argument this week about ancestral diets and more ancient diets, and the fact that um, if you took, say, the average diet maybe in the Stone Age, and you took the average modern diet, sure, I will not necessarily argue that the average diet in America today is completely healthy. I do not make that claim. But if you took the average diet, or even you took the healthiest diet back in the Stone Age and the healthiest diet now, they're probably very similar. And it's not because um, one diet is less processed, and it's not that there's things that were taken out in the modern day or things that were um, like left in back then. It's just we know scientifically that certain foods are more nutrient dense. And if you intake the correct amount of nutrients for your body to function, you're going to be healthier. And if you don't intake more calories than you expend, then you're going to have a leaner physique. These are things that we know through biology, and we've understood them more as we've studied more about the human body. So the fact that something is modern and that's why it's bad is bad reasoning. Um, I do think that our diets could be better now, but that is not because we're going back to something ancient. It's because we are studying more about biological functions and what works best physiologically. So I Yeah, Liver King was born for this job. He does have a lot of appeals to emotion, and especially like appeals to masculinity and kind of this rage idea that we're these predators that got to go out and kill stuff. We got to be manly men. And he, of course, here's his disclaimer once again. He is not a hospital. Yeah, you a person are not a hospital, because hospitals generally are uh a thing, not a person. You also say you're not a doctor. I agree with that. You do have a degree in biochemistry, so it appealed to authority a little bit with the, well, I'm not a doctor, but I have a degree in biochemistry, so you should take me at my word. You should not take him at his word. Um, he doesn't give a lot of sources for his ideas. He just makes assertions, and you see this with frequently with a lot of grifters, and is that they'll make a claim that this is best for your biology if you do my thing. And then, so that's the claim. And then their evidence is just more claims. And so, like, if I say that eating raw cow liver is the optimal way to get nutrition, and my reasoning for that is because that's the way your body was designed, that's not evidence that your idea is correct. That is not evidence in support of eating liver being ideal for your health. It's just another claim that you also have to back up. So we'll see. He makes claims upon claims upon claims, and then really does not provide evidence supporting said claims. So I want to go onto his page about the ancestral tenets. And he really should have on here the ancestral tenet of anabolic steroids, because it seems to be that more importantly than any of these tenants is $11,000 worth of steroids a month. I can't guarantee anything, but I can tell you if you started doing that many steroids, you'd probably have more success in your physique goals. But I'm not a bodybuilder, but obviously whatever this guy says is correct, and he uses steroids. So why shouldn't all of us? Just kidding. Please don't. Here, I'll go back and read the first thing. So it's our responsibility. So we have an ought statement here. It is our responsibility to recreate that environment if we wish to thrive in the modern world. By living ancestrally, we overcome obstacles between ourselves and true health and happiness. We rewrite the mismatch between who we are and the environment in which we live. So, once again, making the claim that the environment was the way that it was in the past, we have evolved in that environment. Therefore, our purpose is to live in that environment, and we are going to thrive if we go back to that environment, which is not necessarily true. There are ways that you can start that don't require you to move to the woods and hunt for your daily breakfast. Instead, you can take small steps to optimize your everyday habits. So, some ways that you can do this: sleep. And I don't think I'm going to have a whole lot of comments on sleep because I'm willing to bet that we might agree here. So he says to improve your sleep, get early morning sun exposure at the same time every day to regulate sleep and wake cycles. Finish your last meal 3 to 4 hours before bed. Enjoy the warmth of sunset as the final environmental cue that the day is winding down. Then put on a pair of blue light blocking sunglasses for the blue light from your phone or artificial lights don't trick your brain into thinking it's daytime all over again. So there is some truth here. And it is important to regulate your sleep and wake cycles. There is evidence to suggest that keeping a regular schedule helps with that, that getting exposure to sunlight and seeing the sun come up and go down helps you stay kind of on track with your circadian rhythm. And that's why a lot of people who work night shifts have some harder times regulating their sleep cycles and also having maybe some more depression related issues because they're having some difficulty maintaining a circadian rhythm. So I don't have a problem necessarily with that. And there is some data to suggest that artificial lights do play a role in dysregulation of circadian rhythms. However, there is not a lot of data suggesting that blue light glasses do anything significant. So that's the one point here. But I mean, all of this really isn't the risky rhetoric that he's going to talk about later. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the sleep point. The next one is eat. And this one I have probably the most problems with because of what he talks about. So in the modern world, we choose processed foods and muscle meats over the most nourishing, nutrient-dense bits like liver and bone marrow. And I don't really have a problem with eating cooked liver and bone marrow. The foods we evolved with for more than 2 million years are the same foods that we still expect today to heal and be healthy. Drop the processed foods, the seed oils, and the liquid calories and start incorporating whole foods, liver, bone marrow, heart, and bone soups to your primal fare to express the best version of you. We are descendants of genus Homo, the baddest mammalian predators that ever lived. We honor their legacy by putting back in what the modern world has left out. This is precisely why we eat like our early ancestors did, the whole animal, nose to tail, horns to hooves. And again, I don't think we should waste animal products, so I don't have a problem with eating the whole animal. But seed oils aren't a problem. Liquid calories aren't always a problem. Like I know he's wanting to talk about things like alcohol, which is often a source of excess calories for people, talking about liquids with more sugar than you need. There is a problem with having excess sugar. Um, Sugar in itself is not the problem, but having more than you need and prioritizing um, nutrient poor foods over nutrient rich foods can lead to nutrient deficiencies. So I don't disagree there. We are not the baddest mammalian predators that ever lived. And I think this is funny. The idea that humans are the apex species um, is not really true. There are plenty of mammals that I can think of that are doing a better job than we are at being predators and at being like when we say that humans are like an apex species, like I know a lot of people primarily refer to intelligence and adaptability. But think about any wild cat or dog species, wolves, lions, tigers, etc. They do a better job, I think, at being predators than humans do. Um, there are things within their anatomy and physiology that allow them to uh, thrive better in those environments. Like humans, especially, are not exclusively carnivores. So while yes, we can kill other animals and eat them, that's not our only source of nutrition. So the fact that we've thrived as long as we have is not necessarily due to us eating meat. There are plenty of other factors uh, as well. Um, about the seed oils, there isn't a lot of data suggesting that they're. I wouldn't say that they're nasty. Uh, they're less nutrient dense maybe than an olive oil, but there's kind of this fallacy too that like people are like it's the naturalistic fallacy and assuming that seed oils are less natural than like an olive oil or a coconut oil. But you do see some problems with coconut oil as well, in that it functions more like a saturated fat than like a unsaturated fat. So oh, nasty and taste wise. Yeah. No, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. In terms of cooking your food, seed oils, yeah, probably not the best to flavor things. So he says, where should I start? Start by dropping processed foods, seed oils, and liquid calories. He already said that. Um, Adding whole foods, especially liver, bone marrow, heart, bone broth, and raw pasteurized eggs. So he advocates for eating raw eggs, which most of the time isn't a problem. Um, there is the risk of salmonella in eggs. It's a low risk, but there is a problem with raw egg whites. If you take an excess of raw egg whites, you can develop a vitamin B12 deficiency. Um, and that's related to binding. Egg whites can bind to B12 and cause you to not absorb them. So be careful with your raw eggs beyond the factor of salmonella. Um, a little bit's not gonna hurt probably, but you do take those risks with those raw eggs. So what does the Liver King eat in a day? So he has 6 farm fresh eggs, a protein shake, whole yogurt with maple syrup, creatine, collagen, almond butter, ghee, and sea salt. 2 ounces of raw liver drizzled in maple syrup with a sprinkle of sea salt. So this is funny because like he kind of craps on liquid calories and sugar and stuff, but maple syrup is like 100% sugar. So you can't in the same breath say that sugar is bad and then also be putting maple syrup on everything because like and sugar's not bad in itself. Sugar is not the enemy. Um, but he's contradicting himself. I really wanted to talk about like I'm not probably not going to read all of the things that he does, but he advocates for raw liver, raw bone marrow, raw dairy products, raw milk, and then later on raw bull testicles, raw heart, and raw sweetbread. So raw organs. And This is problematic, and this is absolutely dangerous. There's evidence that um, pasteurization in dairy products has prevented a lot of foodborne illnesses within dairy, especially certain diseases that we don't see a lot of, such as brucella, are found in cattle, and we get rid of a lot of brucella when we pasteurize milk. So if you're consuming raw milk, you're more at risk for diseases that we shouldn't be getting as foodborne diseases. And then it's funny that he advocates for raw milk, but then says that pasteurized eggs are okay. So I don't know if really there's an issue with the pasteurization product process for him, or if it's just uh I don't know why he contradicted there, like why the pasteurization is okay for one thing and not for another. But let's talk about something kind of gross. So if you don't like discussing gross diseases, I'm not going to show pictures, but let's talk a little bit about parasites. So what are some things that we risk when we eat raw liver? Of course, hepatitis E is a risk. Of course, Hep A, he, uh, Hep B is sexually transmitted, so not really a risk of that. But Hep C potentially, because that can be related to water and food consumption. So of course you have those. You have things like salmonella. You have things like E. coli, Campylobacter, et cetera, et cetera. Typical foodborne illnesses. But I want to discuss parasites. And so I have a study here, and this is from Korea. So you're going to have different exposures depending on where you're at in the world. Um, but this is a study from the Korean Journal of Parasitology. And there's some parasites that I've studied in medical school that are kind of disgusting to think about, but are more at risk with people who consume raw cow liver. And so let me explain a little bit of this study. So how they selected their groups was they took people who had eosinophilia. So people who maybe on an incidental lab panel, they got some blood work done and it showed a high level of eosinophils in their blood. So when we're trying to diagnose an infection, we think of neutrophils being related to bacterial infections. We think of lymphocytes related to viral infections or fungal infections. And then eosinophils can be related to allergies or parasites, usually. So if we see eosinophilia in somebody that we're not thinking an allergic process, we might look for parasites. And toxocariasis is the result of Toxocara canis, which is it is a common roundworm found in the small intestines of dogs. However, T. canis can also infect other animals. Infections of dogs as well as other animals takes place by ingestion of soil contaminated with eggs in dooryards and parks. The infected larvae reach the liver and are dormant in the liver parenchyma. They move slowly from place to place within the liver or migrate to the lungs and other tissues, which is called visceral larva migrans. And this is very terrifying. And there's reasons why I'm not showing the pictures here. But you can actually get these infections as well, like in your skin. There's cutaneous larva migrans, where like if you step in dog poop that has this worm in it, it can burrow into your skin and travel around your body through your skin. So you can often see like the outline of a worm in someone's foot, or like you can see this in someone's eyeball. Like these will just sit there in people's bodies. But it can also travel around your body through your visceral organs. And so an example of this, like we're talking now, is if you ate some raw beef liver that had this roundworm inside it, and then it migrated through your intestinal tract, and it could go into your liver. It could go to other places in your body. So it sounds really gross, and it is. A lot of people that have these uh, toxocariasis infections, maybe they don't know necessarily that they have it. Um, they might be incidentally found on these lab tests, but even if it wouldn't cause problems theoretically, I do not want to have worms in my liver, and I don't think many people want to have worms in their liver. So, like animals, human infections may take place in two ways: ingestion of embryonated eggs and transfer of encapsulated larvae of T. canis in the tissues in the host. So, eating raw organs, livers of cow, pig, lamb, and chicken have been reported as sources of human infections. So, I do want to switch over to up to date because we're going to talk more about what this parasite does to you. And kind of the life cycle and all that fun stuff. And I will probably zoom in a little bit so you can see this better. All right, so toxocariasis. Humans are accidental hosts, so we're not the primary host. And when I say that, like, it's not like there's a created purpose for these parasites. Like, nobody said, well, cows are the designed host for these. Well, no, but they've evolved in such a way to where they often reproduce better and end up in cow livers and in dogs and all that stuff. So humans are not the most common host, but they are accidental hosts who become infected by ingesting eggs in contaminated soil or food via ingestion of encysted larvae in the tissues of infected hosts. Direct contact with infected puppies and kittens is not classically considered to be a risk factor. And this was something we even saw in the Korean study, is that they took into account the variable of dog and cat exposure, and it showed that in those people, it was like 87% of the people with eosinophilia and recent history of ingestion of raw liver had this parasitic infection, whereas 20 something percent of the control group did. So I don't remember the p-value off the top of my head, but they showed that the liver ingestion was significant, but the puppy and kitten exposure was not a really contributing factor. But that is a way that you can get this. So following ingestion, the eggs hatch and the larvae penetrate the intestinal wall. So they go through the duodenal wall and are carried by circulation to a variety of tissues: the liver, the heart, the lungs, the brain, the muscle, and eyes. So you can get this all over your body. Larvae do not undergo any further development at these sites, but the host inflammatory response against the migrating larvae can cause both mechanical and immunopathologic damage to tissues, which leads to local reactions that are the basis of clinical toxocariasis. So it's not necessarily the worm itself that's causing the problems, but it is your own reaction to said worms. And so clinical manifestations, you get the visceral larva migrans. So if they localize in the liver, you get hepatomegaly. So you can have an enlarged liver. You can get nodules in the liver. In the lungs, you can get difficulty breathing, wheezing, chronic cough. You can get parenchymal infiltrate. So you can get gunk in your lungs. You can get nodules in the lungs. You can also get eosinophilic meningoencephalitis, space-occupying lesions, myelitis, and cerebral vasculitis causing seizures. So you can get some brain problems, brain inflammation, and seizures from these parasites if they make it to your brain. They can also go to your eyes and cause vision impairment, photophobia, all that kind of lovely stuff. You might also get swelling and pus production in the eye, known as uveitis. It's pretty nasty. So this is one reason not to ingest raw beef liver, but there's another type of parasite that I want to cover. So this isn't the only parasite you're at risk for. And even beyond the two that we're going to cover today, there are more liver parasites that you can be exposed to. So the next one we're going to talk about are liver flukes, and these more commonly come from sheep's liver. But if you were to eat raw sheep liver, this one's pretty nasty. This is Fasciola hepatica. And this often happens in Central South America, Europe, and Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. It's not as common in North America, but it can occur. So the usual hosts of Fasciola hepatica are sheep and cattle, but you can also see it in goats, buffalo, horses, donkeys, camels, hogs, deer, and rabbits. And so you get this in your livestock, and then essentially um, it'll grow in from the eggs in the biliary ducts of the animal, and then is passed in the stool, and then becomes embryonated in water, release myristidia, which will then invade a snail, which is the intermediate host, where then it undergoes multiple developmental stages through sporocysts, all the way up through cercariae. Cercariae are released, and they insist on aquatic vegetation. So that's a lot more life cycle than you really needed to know. But again, with this, humans are not typical hosts for these flukes. And so if we get this, let's say if we insert ourselves into the middle of this life cycle, if we so the eggs are in the biliary duct of the cow, let's say, we take the liver out and we eat it raw, we are now taking the place of this next stage. So where the egg should come out, release myristidia, and then invade the snail, we are essentially kind of becoming the intermediate host of this fluke. And so then we eat the flukes, and then the flukes can then move other places. So they can cause liver destruction, causing necrosis and fibrosis. They can also obstruct the bile ducts, causing thickening, dilatation, and fibrosis of the proximal biliary tree. So you could get a presentation looking like choledocholithiasis, almost like if you blocked off, like if you had a gallstone in the biliary tree, you can get obstruction of the liver, of the gallbladder, and of the pancreas, causing lots of problems. And the amount of damage, kind of the more parasites you have, the more risks you have with getting these problems. So you have a few different phases of this fluke infection. You've got the acute liver phase occurring within 6 to 12 weeks of ingestion. And that's where you're going to get fever, right upper quadrant pain, and hepatomegaly. So if someone were to come to me with these symptoms, I would think probably hepatitis, maybe they got gallstones, maybe they've got choledocholithiasis. You might see some jaundice, etc. You see a very hepatic presentation of the disease, and you see the marked eosinophilia, which is going to be the differentiating factor that you have a parasite here. But you enter a chronic phase as well, and you can develop some other symptoms. But really, something really scary about these flukes, and probably the most notable syndrome caused by these, are something called Halzoun syndrome. It was discovered in Lebanon in 1905. And this is attributed to Fasciola hepatica, the fluke. So let's say you eat the fluke that's in the liver, and you don't notice that the liver has these flukes in it. So you eat the raw liver, and the fluke attaches itself to your esophagus or your airway or wherever it's going to find a spot, and it's going to sit there, and it's going to cause an inflammatory response in whatever tissue it's attached to. So you get edema, you get swelling, and this is a big problem if this is in your airway or your esophagus, right? You're going to get an obstruction. So you have this fluke and this inflammatory obstruction causing you to then, you could have respiratory failure, respiratory arrest, and die. Or you could also, in a less extreme sense, have an intestinal obstruction, like an esophageal obstruction, where you can't eat and you die. So basically, this was a long rant on parasites, and we've covered two parasites now. But all this to say that don't eat raw liver because you're risking this. You could die from having a fluke stuck in your trachea, and it could kill you. So have fun. Have fun with that, everybody. Back to back to the 9 ancestral tenets, because I need to learn how to be a primal predator. So, and I don't know what's up with the raw bull testicles. I didn't really looked into that because I knew I was going to spend like a half hour talking about liver flukes. So then also things that he promotes a keto diet, which I might do a whole separate episode on keto diets. And at least there's one thing good here, is that he does not recommend it for everybody. And I agree. There are some people who benefit from a keto diet. So there's evidence suggesting that people with diabetes or people with seizures can benefit from relying on beta oxidation for energy production. And so I'm not going to say that nobody should do a keto diet. However, you need to be very, very careful with this because keto is a starvation diet. Like, that is the physiology involved. It is reduction of glucose, so not utilizing the glycolysis pathway and instead relying on beta oxidation and formation of ketones to supply energy. And there's some problems with that related to acetyl-CoA production and the lack of ability to produce sugar through gluconeogenesis. But that being said, like, especially people who do anaerobic exercise, if you are a weightlifter, if you do wrestling, if you do any kind of like fast twitch sports, probably not a good idea because you need glucose and glycogen to do those activities. However, if you do endurance sports, say if you're a marathon runner and you've trained your slow twitch fibers more effectively, you might do better on a keto diet because those muscles rely on beta oxidation to accomplish that. So it's a very nuanced topic of whether or not someone should be on keto, and if you're considering doing it, I highly recommend that you talk to your doctor about your risks and your benefits from the diet. So I'm not going to say don't do it. I'm not going to say do it. Be smart about it. Get medical attention to decide whether or not it's a good option for you. But don't do it because it's a fad diet. Are keto diets worse for someone that has more fast twitch muscle fibers? Not necessarily. It just depends on, again, everything else. It depends on the risks and benefits of what your goals are. For a diabetic, it's probably going to be more beneficial. But I can discuss that more thoroughly in a different episode. He also recommends fasting, which, again, going along with starvation diets. Will you lose weight on a fast? Yeah, probably. You probably will. But it's not because you're optimizing your health. It is because you are not intaking more calories than you're expending. So there you go. It's science. Consider a 5-day water fast to address root cause issues. No. And then we got the buzzword there too, because throwing out addressing the root cause instead of addressing symptoms is a way for them to say that their stuff works because we have an answer to your root cause and they don't. And I'm not going to address that ad nauseum because I've had so many episodes recently where we've talked about that. The next tenet is move. And I'm not going to, disagree too much with a lot of this. because I agree. We do need to be more active. A lot of things that he says about exercise is good, apart from um, the fact that the exercise should hurt, because people might misinterpret that. And I do think like there is a level of discomfort that is expected from exercise, and it is true that more intense exercise, like you need to exercise at a level of intensity that is challenging for you, in order to gain that adaptation and benefit. But you also need to not overdo it. Like, don't exercise yourself into the ground. Don't sacrifice your joints and your muscles and your mental health even for the sake of um, being primal or being more masculine. Like, pain is gained to an extent, but don't overdo it. Like, listen to your body sounds like a cheap cliche, but there are ways to build that adaptation and challenge yourself in a way that is not going to cause you harm. So there's some nuance there with that. But I just wanted to clarify that for people that might misinterpret this and might be hurt by that particular piece of advice. Um, so his workouts, work hard every day, sometimes twice a day, even on rest days. He's always moving. Um, and I don't have a problem with a lot of this. Like he does exercise a lot, and I know most people do not have the ability to do um 2 workouts a day. Like if you're making as much money as he does, like if you can afford $11,000 worth of anabolic steroids per month, yeah, you're probably in a situation where you can afford to do 2 workouts a day. Um, but most people do not have that luxury, and even so, a lot of this is very extreme. It's very extreme exercise, and this is something you do see with people on high amounts of anabolic steroids, as well as that they will get into this grind or die mindset where um, they will just work out and work out and work out and work out to a level that is harmful for them. And I do want to talk a little bit here about body dysmorphia, and this is something that he probably struggles with, and a lot of people in the bodybuilding community do struggle with. And there isn't necessarily a problem with wanting to look a certain way, but when you're engaging in problematic health practices such as eating raw liver and getting potential exposure to parasites, when you're working out to the point where you're getting rhabdo, or you view yourself in such a way that I'm not valuable because I don't look this way, or I'm not a good person because I don't grind myself into the ground, that's a problem. So if you have symptoms like that, um, there's a valid place in here for therapy and for addressing uh, why you feel like you need to harm yourself uh, in the name of aesthetics. So just some caution there. Um, he does. I don't know if it's on this particular page, but like there's one page that he has that talks about like his the main exercise being like 30 minutes of exercise 3 times a day, which I mean that's more walking than a lot of people have time for, but that's great advice. Like he does give some little pearls of good advice. Like, yeah, walking at a pace that's helpful for you, that's not gonna hurt you and your joints and your body. Like walking's great. I totally advocate for people getting out and trying to walk more. Um, but and certain things of this, if you want to do some of these exercises and they don't hurt you, and you can have somebody to help you learn how to do them properly, I'm fine with this. The next one is shield. So we get more and more wooey as we kind of go. So the fourth ancestral tenet is shield because we need to avoid dangers just like our early ancestors did. But instead of running from lions, nowadays we run from seed oils, excessive Wi-Fi, EMFs, and man-made poisons. Dangers like these end up compounding, and with an additive effect, they disrupt our hormones, metabolism, and ability to get deep sleep. Citation needed, please, because there isn't evidence that says that EMFs disrupt your hormones or your metabolism. And the assertion that these have a compounding effect and an additive effect is an unfounded assertion. And something that I do want to address rhetorically here is when people think about additive effects, it's easy to intuit that, well, if I have one thing and I add a second thing that's very similar, I'm going to get a 1 + 1 = 2 effect. Or that this is an addition problem where I'm going to get the sum of the components as the result. And that's not necessarily true. So compounding and additive effects require evidence to confirm that, even with things like pharmaceuticals. If you add one drug with a certain function and then add another drug with a similar function, sometimes they might have an additive effect and you get double the effect. But that's not always the case. Sometimes, if you have one one drug, and you add a similar drug, they don't have any changes. Sometimes you get a maximum effect that you cannot overcome just by adding on a second agent. So this is intuitive. It is not scientifically based, and there's no evidence that this disrupts our hormones and is playing into more quackery that is unfounded. So, where should I start? It will seem totally impractical to avoid all danger, but you can certainly take steps. For instance, instead of avoiding your off gassing furniture and toxic flame retardant mattress, get some house plants in each room to soak up the toxins and produce fresh air. Get plants if you want, but like you don't need to avoid furniture and stuff because of chemicals. Do you drink alcohol? Uh Liver King goes straight for the ethanol and drinks Everclear. All right, so we're trying to optimize our health, and we're going to eat liver because it's going to improve our function. Um, we're also going to drink like straight Everclear and also do a crap ton of steroids. But if you can become more robust, if you can build biological resilience so that you can better withstand dangers, poisons, and toxins, there's nothing wrong with a little alcohol from time to time, especially if it's done right. So yeah, I mean, it's not wrong to use alcohol every now and then, but the reasoning behind why is false. And it's not because we're building up a biological resilience. It's because it's really not toxic in low doses. That's the reason. Like, you don't need to appeal to the masculinity again with like, you are an alpha, you can withstand all this stuff because you've trained, you've used the ancestral tenets, we've evolved to thrive in harsh environments. You don't need to make that argument. It's okay to have alcohol because it is not toxic in low doses. Here we go. Do you take any artificial enhancer? Liver King has never cheated nor taken a shortcut in any capacity of life. You earn the life and the wife that you behold. Wow, you earn your wife. That sounds weird. We believe you should avoid man-made toxins and commit to the 9 ancestral tenets. You will unlock the greatest version of yourself, and you will optimize your testosterone, your growth hormone, your IGF-1, your DHT, key metabolic markers, and you will achieve a higher version of yourself. No steroids necessary. Really? Really, Liver King? You've never used a steroid, and you don't need steroids if you do these things. So let me think. There's a few possibilities here. Either you're a liar, which we know is the correct answer, that he has admitted to steroid use. So you have done this. But let's say we didn't know. Let's say we didn't know whether or not he used steroids. So either he lied, and he does, or um, the 9 ancestral tenets are not going to uh or like he's not adhering to these 9 ancestral tenets, because like if you don't need the steroids, and he did this naturally, or like if you don't need the steroids but the 9 ancestral tenets work, and he needed the steroids to overcome his difficulties maintaining his physique, then he's not following his tenets, or the tenets don't actually work. This is definitely a hypocrisy. But yeah, he should probably take this down. I don't know if he clearly has not edited the website since the recent exposure of his email. What next? We'll quickly go through the rest of these, but connect. The 5th ancestral tenet is connect. Our early ancestors were in constant contact with the earth 24/7, 365. The earth has a slightly negative charge, which provides a grounding force for our electrophysiology. With the advent of rubber shoes, cars, houses, and elevated beds, we no longer come into contact with this grounding force. Think about it. When was the last time you had your bare feet planted on the earth for any real duration? The benefits of connecting to the earth include better sleep, improved blood pressure, and anti-inflammatory and protection against EMFs. So once again, against EMFs, and also the claim that grounding does anything, all you have to do is take your shoes off and put your bare feet directly on the earth or hug a tree. All claims. Give me some data. What are the benefits? Improved sleep, anti-inflammatory, stress reduction, muscle recovery, pain management. He has that on there twice. Improved circulation, antioxidants, protecting the body from EMFs. Citation needed. Where should I start? I mean, yeah, take your shoes off. What if it's raining? Don't think of weather as a barrier, but an opportunity to connect. Yeah, okay, bro. Cold. Comfort is not good for the organism. This is why the 6th ancestral tenet is get cold. So again, this is problematic in that he is saying that you need to suffer to do better. So suffering is good. And I have problems with that. And I mentioned already why I have problems with that, so I don't need to go back over that. But he's saying that since our ancestors were regularly subjected to cold, we should also do that, because we have brown adipose tissue, which is metabolically active for thermoregulation. We have 60,000 miles of blood vessels within us that are lined with smooth muscle that constrict or dilate based on our perception of temperature. This process of vasoconstriction and vasodilation is like exercise for your blood vessels. We're purposely built for cold. No, so this is false, because it's not like exercise. You don't need to exercise your blood vessels. They do this not because we're meant to. We are not made to do this. We're not meant to do this. This is compensation. So the fun thing about compensation is that it's not the optimal scenario, right? If you're compensating, that means there's something that is not optimal, and we're trying to adjust to at least be okay enough. And so cold is something like, if we function actually at a higher body temperature than the outside world. So we need to be relatively warm. If we're not, we have thermoregulation happening, and we try to vasoconstrict to not let the heat leave. And this is compensatory. It is not the goal. Like if we take something like shock, like a lot of times you might hear people talking about he's decompensating. And that's when like there's something wrong with the body. So obviously, like if someone's bleeding, if you stab somebody and they're bleeding out, For a while, they're going to compensate. So for a while, their sympathetic nervous system is going to kick in. They're going to vasoconstrict. They're going to try to hold on to the blood as long as they can. They're going to try to um, reverse the situation. But when that doesn't work anymore, there comes a point where you cannot uphold that effort because it takes a lot of energy to compensate. So once you are no longer able to compensate, you decompensate and you die. So the compensation, the fact that you've vasoconstricted to hold on to blood, is not you being in optimal health. You're already in a shit situation to begin with, and the compensation is just, let's try not to die. So him saying that this compensation is the goal is false, because compensation is never the goal. It is the adjustment for what happens when you're not in a good situation. And he advocates for contrast showers. And I'm going to do a whole episode. I think every single episode of Medical Myths that I do, I end up saying at least 3 times, I'm going to do a whole other episode on this specific topic. And that's the case here. We're going to do a whole episode on contrast showers because there really isn't evidence suggesting that alternating hot and cold showers for 30 seconds at a time does anything for you except make you uncomfortable. And yeah, if you make yourself uncomfortable, you're going to change your blood flow because, again, compensation, you're going to vasoconstrict and all that. That's not a benefit. That's not a good thing. You're forcing your body to be in a state of distress. Like, what is with the glorification of distress? This is a problem. And I think this is probably my main problem with all of his rhetoric, is that it all comes down to glorification of human distress. And I think that it's more beneficial to try to relieve distress. The goal should be to not be in distress. And sometimes you do need to be put in a little bit of distress in order to do better. An example is surgery. If you need surgery, you're going to have to be in distress for a little bit. They're going to have to probably cut part of your body, move things around, put you back together, and that's going to suck. That is an appropriate amount of distress for the situation, because eventually you're going to hopefully feel better. You're going to get some symptom reduction, hopefully, and maybe better quality of life, better life expectancy, etc. So there's an appropriate level of distress, and then there's overly glorifying distress. And I think that he is doing the latter and not the former. The next tenet is sun. The 7th ancestral tenet is sun for the natural production of vitamin D. This prevents tooth decay, increases immunity, and improves overall health. I don't have a problem with this. Walking in the sun is a good thing. Cool. Moving on. Fight. The 8th ancestral tenet is fight. Our ancestors evolved fighting, hunting, protecting, struggling, persevering, and eventually winning. And when we win, we are rewarded with a boost of dopamine and androgens. In modernity, there is not a lot of natural opportunities to put yourselves in harm's way, to overcome struggle, to really fight for something of value. I believe for us to really thrive, we have to possess a type of high courage to continue to fight for something meaningful, to foster an inner fire, to take real risks, and continue to create ways to win. That is how we avoid falling into a rut. Look for opportunities that scare the shit out of yourself. In this way, we can honor the legacy of our ancestors and our biology, so we can enjoy the spoils of the modern world and express the best version of ourselves. Again, this is glorifying distress, and I do think that there is value in working hard. There is value in having courage and fighting for what's meaningful. There is value in doing things that go beyond yourself, and I think that that's valuable. Um, but you don't need to put yourself in a position of suffering if it is not necessary for the situation. Um, the glorification, again, of distress, I think isn't appropriate here. I do think variety is good. Um, honoring the ancestors being the reason for why we should suffer is weird. And I don't necessarily agree with that particular aspect. And the last one we have, oh, and also along with fight, this guy says later that he is a jiu-jitsu practitioner, and I accept that there are a lot of pseudoscientists and grifters within the jiu-jitsu community. I'm part of the jiu-jitsu community, and I hate to say that we have people like this, but we have people like this, unfortunately. Yeah, secularity, I also agree. I don't think the guy knows what a tenet is. I I agree with your assessment. Finally is bond. And this is a weird one. So we have the ninth ancestral tenet is bond. Since the inception of our species, we have belonged to a far greater purpose. So here we kind of have this appeal to like a higher power. He doesn't explicitly say it. It's more implicit in this. We have belonged to a far greater purpose, asserting that there is a purpose that we did not choose. Something else has determined this purpose for us. Our ancestors' purpose was guarding the perimeter from danger to protect one's tribe, hunting and foraging to feed one's tribe, building, tool making, and weapon making to shelter and shield one's tribe, caretaking and love making to nurture, to nourish, and to grow one's tribe. There was purpose in teaching and tradition and in play that cultivate traditions and deepen social bonds. That kind of purpose, support, care, and attention decided whether people would live or die. And I think it's okay to have a need to bond. Like I think it's fine to prioritize bonding with your community and making your own purpose, your self-proclaimed purpose to protect your people and to build a community, to build tools, build shelters, nurture one another, um, grow your community. Those are all great things. I think that that's fine. The problem is when he then appeals to this greater purpose beyond us, and he says later on here, do you believe in a higher power? And he says, a lot of people ask me about I can't speak anymore, my beliefs or religious affiliation. This is what I believe. I believe that we are all of one peoples. I believe that we and our animal brethren breathe from the same air, that we drink from the same body of water, that we share the same life-giving sun and forces that nourish our strikingly similar DNA. I believe that my fellow man is my brother and my fellow woman is my sister. I believe that it's in our ability to deeply love, bond, and nurture and share the success of the hunt that we have become the very humans that we are today. I believe that all of this is possible because of a greater, higher power. So he goes on all these really great things that like we are one species of human. We all should want to be better for each other. We all breathe the same air. We all, humans and non-human animals, are all sharing this planet together, and we should all unite for, reducing suffering. But then says that all of this is possible because of a greater, higher power, and he doesn't say which one. I'm not going to speculate at all because I don't really care. But there you go. I think, I don't know, put in the chat if you do you think that he that this is the reasoning behind his traditions, or do you think maybe this is part of the grift? And it doesn't really matter to me either way, but I'm just curious to see what you think about that. So that's this guy. That is the Liver King. And let's see, are there any other? He's got some recipes in an ebook and resources. He's got this is one thing I wanted to share. Reading material. The people that he recommends to read. We have a lot of people that I've never heard of before, but we have people on here like Joseph Mercola, a known quack. We also have Josh Axe, my other favorite known quack. I didn't see any other people that I really recognized, but I mean, I can talk all I want about this issue. We put a lot of time into this today. Secular Rarity says, I believe he is speaking in vague generalities so as to try and BS his way into getting theists and non-theists to join his garbage program. And I think I agree with you there. I do kind of think that he was super vague to try to appeal to as wide of an audience as he possibly could. But yeah, this guy's a grifter. He came up with this idea that sounds great. It sounds intuitive. He got a lot of people in on his BS, and he explicitly lied about how he got there. And then he got busted. So all of you should stay skeptical of people that you see, because their results might not be related to what they tell you they are. They might be hiding something and telling you to buy their products when you shouldn't. So keep critically thinking about this. I hope you all like talking about liver flukes today and all that. Don't eat raw liver. Don't torture yourself through exercise. You can definitely strive to, eat healthier foods, take certain walks. If you're able to go on a walk, that's not a bad thing for the majority of people. So there's some good advice here that he gives, but he clouds it with very poor rhetoric and dishonesty. So that's all I've got on the Liver King. After this, normally we would have our Patreon after show, but we're not going to have it today because, and I say Uncle Beck is in the chat, but if you'd be able to post the link for the next stream, I'm going to be hanging out with Skeptic Haven later on. Beck's going to be there. I think Cindy Plaza is going to be there. And Stephanie Helms, I think, is the other panelist over there. But we're going to be talking about trans issues, of course. So if Beck wants to share the link in the side chat, I hope to see you all over there. That's going to be in about a half an hour. So join us over there and stay curious, everybody. We'll see you all in the next one. Bye, everyone.